Welcome to the Penny Bloom Podcast. Ain't another place that has got more bombast. Romp past your mom, dad's listening to Tomcats. Talking everything that make you sad. We don't want that. We're here to make you smile. Put your mind at ease. Peace, love, and bloom, and always praise Keanu Reeves. This what we about. This some weeding now. We'll talk until we can't no more, and then we peacing out. Alright, let's go. Penny Bloom Podcast. It's the Penny Bloom Podcast. Penny Bloom Podcast. It's the Penny Bloom Podcast. Penny Bloom Podcast. Penny Bloom Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the Penny Bloom Podcast. Today, we are wrapping up our Christopher Nolan 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀 pod, the director's spotlight. We're looking forward to Oppenheimer. We've discussed The Prestige. We've discussed Dunkirk. And today we wrap up a little trilogy here with Tenet before we go into Oppenheimer. This is a fun one. This is a fun one, and I'm excited to talk about it. I'm Colton Robertson. I'm joined by Joseph George. What's up, homie?
Oh, what up, what up? Always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it is always a pleasure to have you. Tenet, it was released on September 3rd, 2020. Almost certainly did terrible at the box office. Written by Christopher Nolan and directed by Christopher Nolan.
Man,
Man,
COVID movie, right? This one was
big
in the
time
middle of
COVID
pandemic.
movie.
Yep.
Yeah,
And,
COVID movie indeed.
Yeah, I wonder how much it did end up making, because $365 million at the box office is what it looks like, and then the budget of it. This one probably had quite a budget to it, $200 million. Okay, so it did make money, but probably not what they
including like promotionals and stuff. You know, maybe not. But still, it was so I have an interesting relationship to this movie and an interesting relationship to Christopher Nolan overall, where I sleep on this man. I consistently do. You know, I've watched a couple movies in the past that I didn't like, and you know, there are those ones that you slip in there, Interstellar, The Dark Knight, and I'm like, oh fuck yeah, you know, I love those. But then you also got, for me, Inception and The Dark Knight Rises and stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm not feeling this that way. I'm not feeling this that way. And then I kind of project his whole filmography to be more like those two instead of the top two, and I don't know why I do that. That's unfair. And it's one of the only dudes I do that with. Rarely do I go into a movie like I did with this one, fully expecting not to like it.
Yeah.
You know, like that doesn't happen to me a lot. I'm usually able to keep an open, go into something, be like, you know what? There's something for everybody and everything. I'll be able to see that. This one, I was like, there is almost no fucking way I like Tenet. And I couldn't even tell you the reason that's the case, that I thought that. I'm coming out the other side, a big old fan of Tenet, buddy.
Yeah. I'd say the only movie I have that gripe with Nolan is Inception now. And like I'm rewatching the Dark Knight trilogy, haven't quite gotten to Rises yet. But I do think I like that more than Inception. But Inception is the only one where I'm kind of like, all right, it was okay. The concept is cool.
There. I watched The Dark Knight Rises earlier today and can confidently say that's another one I didn't give a fair shake, and I like it more than Inception. Yeah. But it's still bottom two of Craig had to reconnect, I'm assuming. Still the bottom two for me as far as
But as far as like this one, I've seen it one time. I don't know whenever I saw it the first time. There's no way it was at a theater. Right? Or like, did this release
I think
in
it was
theaters,
pretty quick
or?
To HBO Max after its release, if I remember correctly. And maybe it wasn't
that's
HBO
what
Max,
I did.
but some sort of streaming service.
Not exactly sure, but I remember just coming out like the concept was cool. And like, I remember that. Like, it was a cool movie and I enjoyed it during the time. But I'm like, man, once I started to think about the details of how it all worked, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a little lost, not gonna lie. And then like the first 30 minutes, it's kind of just moving very fast, and like they throw a lot at you right away, and you're like, oh, am I supposed to be remembering all of this? Like, is this important? Or like, and
no, big time. There's the first act, even having finished the movie, and I love the last two acts. Like once you get to about because it's a 2.5-hour movie. Once you get about to the 55-minute mark to an hour, around that time, the movie takes off. And it goes in a different direction where you're like, oh, now I'm in, you know? And the last 2 acts, I fucking loved the last 2 acts of this movie. But even knowing where the story goes, I can't imagine the first act is all that much better. Besides the opera.
That's true, because there is something that does connect eventually back there. But like, whenever he's just going on his path, and like, can we give him a name? Like, it's going to be really, like, just weird calling him the protagonist every time.
I mean, you could call him John David Washington
I guess
if you want to, you know.
JDW, is that like, is that commonly used? I don't know.
JD Dub?
Maybe JDW. Or just John, I don't know. But he like, you know, the opera was cool, and then like the pill, taking it, thinking he's dead. It's like, oh, now you're in to like, you know, it was a test. Like, that's pretty cool. But then after that point, when he's on his mission to like just talk to people, like jumping from person to person, it's like, is Michael Caine gonna be a big character in this? Is Priya gonna be a big character in this? Is, you know,
I like
you're
Priya.
like,
I do like Priya, and that was something that stuck out to me, like the introduction of Neil. So like that's the thing, is that on first watch, I probably shouldn't have said it wouldn't be as fulfilling. There would be a lot of stuff that I think I would get out of it, like fresh off this first viewing. But if I were to give it time to breathe and then come back to this, I don't think I'd get it, because there is so much that happens in this fucking movie. You know, like the relationship that Priya and the protagonist form over the course of this film is a really fascinating one, and to see the way that concludes is kind of bizarre, and that's something I need to wrap my head around fully. I understand the end of this movie, the point of this movie, and everything. I still don't get the importance of the gesture and the word Tenet.
Apparently it's all based on the 𝗖𝗵𝗿𝗀. I've never heard of it before this, but it's like a tablet that was found in, I don't know if it was Egypt or somewhere very long time ago, very ancient, and it has the word Tenet in the middle and then like a cross, and it's like a 5x5
as it is backward.
It's like a 5x5 word, and 𝗖𝗍's at the top and bottom going backwards, so it's 𝗖𝗍 and then 𝗀𝗏 on the top and bottom. It's like just a magic square. I don't know what you call it, but
magic square.
Yeah, and I don't fully understand that all either. And then like them, like they always say, like whatever has happened. And then like even the protagonist, like he's like, yeah, I get it now. Whatever happened, or whatever has happened, or whatever. There's no change in it.
Yeah, but whatever happened.
Okay. That's
so whatever is going to happen already happened.
That's true.
Like you can't.
Okay, that makes more sense to me then. Okay, I like that, because I'm trying to like wrap my head around like, okay, so
or vice versa. Either way it works, but I think it's either whatever happened or whatever happened happens. Okay. In both ways, I think it kind of works the same, but regardless,
𝗖𝗍 didn't set all this stuff in motion. He was like being used by the people in the future to get him to get all of the parts together to bury it so that they could come upon it during their time. So it's not like 𝗖𝗍's the one who created all of this and everything. He's kind of just who the future people are using. And then the protagonist is supposed to just be, I guess, before the scientist, because I don't like. I guess I'm trying to think of the semantics and trying to make it work, but it's like time travel never makes sense in anyone's brain.
There's an express line that I really, really enjoyed from the scientist who, like, it's a heavy exposition part of the movie, but they have to do it. Otherwise, we're not going to even come close to understanding a fucking thing that's happening. And it's when the protagonist is introduced to all these concepts, and she's like, "Put your hand there," and it like rewinds up into his hand. And he's like, "How?" And she's like, "It doesn't matter how." You know, like she goes, "It doesn't matter how. What matters is that it happened." You know, like it's just it.
Yeah.
It just is. It wouldn't have done that if you didn't put your hand there.
That's right. Because he's like, what about free will? And then she's like, no, it wouldn't have done anything if you didn't put your hand there. So, okay, that does clear it up a little bit. So it's not like...
Even then, it just kind of makes it more... It makes it more mysterious in that you're not supposed to really... Because I don't think they ever expressly explain why this works the way it does. It just does work that way. This material has the ability to make things go backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like...
That's it.
I guess did they expressly say how many years in the future that it was? Or maybe they don't even know, actually.
Yeah, I don't think they know. I think that's one of the things... the person they talked to... Yeah, because the scientist says, I just got the wall. And I get the stuff out of the wall. Like, that's all I know about it. Like, that's...
Yeah. So, I guess, like, it is just technology that no one even understands because it hasn't even really been created yet. It's just there because...
And they're like, we know this is what it does.
Yeah. And, like...
We don't know how.
It's so cool how it can be anything. Like, at first it was like, we just saw bullets, like, coming out. But then they have that massive room.
He's like, why does it feel so weird? He's like,
Yeah.
She's like, well, you're catching the bullet. You're not shooting it.
It's so, and it's like, he says it's like an intuition thing. Like, you just have to feel it like, whenever he does pick up the bullet, he's like, oh, it's like an intuition thing. Like, he just, it's not something you have to think about it expressly, for it to happen. It's not just like that that bullet was made specifically for him to pick up at that moment, No, it was like, it's just because he's being taught in that moment.
It's just because that bullet can do that shit.
Yeah.
And that's what's, that's what makes it work, is that it is just, we're not going to bother even attempting to explain to you why this, and I love that it's just a material. It's just this stuff.
Inverted. Yeah,
it's inverted.
It's just inverted, and
when you invert, everything's inverted.
Mm-hmm.
Gravity will feel the same; it'll react the same. But you can't breathe because inverted lungs don't breathe air right. If it gets really hot, you get really cold. If you get really cold, if it gets really cold, you get really hot. And it's like, I appreciate the simplicity of the principles, even though it's like layered in this air of complication where you're like, oh my god, how does this even happen?
They say it's like reverse entropy, and entropy is like one of the most confusing concepts in all of science. Like, even people, like, it's in a lot of different fields, but it's like, it just doesn't make really any sense. and I don't know, I love whenever, like, Robert Pattinson or Neil, he's like trying to, or I think they're cluing in Kat, that's what it is. Like, yeah, she's already, like, Priya already considers her too far gone, so, like, we might as well let her know why she's gonna die. And then he's like, all right, well, let's start with the basics. So basically, every law in physics, and then it just cuts off. Like, they don't even go into the explanation because it's just like, we don't really care about that. That's not what the movie is
like
about.
The anti-Interstellar in that way. Interstellar was so obsessed with explaining to you the science behind everything because the science exists. It's there. We know theoretically why these things are happening. This we can't even kind of wrap our heads around, and that's what's really, really interesting. And I like comparing those two movies for that reason, because what's interesting is that, I can always kind of I feel like I can pair movies in Nolan's filmography. Now I'm going to pair Dunkirk and Oppenheimer, obviously the Dark Knight trilogy, but this one was interesting because for the first 40 minutes, I thought I was getting into an Inception type thing. That was the movie I thought was like its spirit sibling. And that's kind of something that I still stand by for the most part. But by the end, I felt a little bit more like Interstellar type shit, where I was like, it's this almost impossible thing that's so difficult to wrap our minds around. But it just works, and I think that's super fucking cool. I fucking love that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's better that they just try not to explain it at all, and it's just like, well, when we get these 9 parts together, that's when the end of the world can happen and can revert everything and end of play. It's just like, oh, can you be more precise? And it's like, oh, well, everything and everything you've loved and everything is just gone. It's just very simple. Not even like that the world will explode, that this will happen first, then this, then this. It's just like, no.
No, it'll all just meet in the middle and cease.
And I don't know, it's very, like, I'm thinking of, like, these future people. Like, the whole time, like, I'm, like, watching this movie, I'm like, okay. So these future people, they have access to all this technology and all that we can't even comprehend during watching this movie. So they're, like, going back in time, or trying to completely reverse the flow of time because like their world is too far gone, right? Or like it's just global warming and climate change is too much, so they need to completely reverse time. So I guess they just want to invert the whole world. The whole universe. I don't know how big
that's
it is.
Interesting. I took what was happening with 𝗏𝗏 specifically for him to be going off the rails and doing stuff that the future people aren't asking of him.
Ooh. Okay,
like,
yeah.
When he knows what this stuff can do, he's like, well, I'm dying. I'm going to take this whole motherfucker with me. They don't want the world to end. They want the world to be fixed.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, so it makes 𝗏𝗏 an interesting character in that regard as well. But
because I thought it was like, even in the future. Well, no, you're right, because they would just reverse the well, because 𝗏𝗏 definitely wanted to take the world with him because he was dying. I think that I do agree with that, but I thought like if 𝗏𝗏 just did what he was supposed to do, bury it there, keep it there, and all the 9 parts are there, say like 200 years in the future, those future people come up, dig it up, then they use it however it's used, and then that's what reverses the flow of time. And then they said, even if it's used, though, like, everything, like, the people who were moving forward in time cease to exist. Like, because the way we're moving now, like, I think he explained it like it's like flowing upstream.
Oh, the inverted people would still exist, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like,
okay. That's something I did not get.
Time is moving forward for and like how we see it, and like I think he said like there's so much in our direction or whatever that we're the stream that's flowing in our direction. But then once they used it, it would switch that completely.
Yeah.
So,
okay. No, that makes sense though. That makes a lot more sense in my head as to why they were like collaborating at all. You know.
Because it was like a Manhattan Project. That's what the comparison they made, which is really cool, just to get like a little Oppenheimer drop in there for 𝗏𝗏 and like talking to the protagonist. So that was pretty cool. But then like he said, like imagine the modern day, not even the modern day Manhattan Project, but the future Manhattan Project that hasn't even happened yet. Because that's what he's like. He's like, oh, is it nuclear? She's like, worse. And a lot, like a fan theory is that scientist that explained how it all worked is eventually the one that will figure it all out and then kill herself, because that's what was said. The scientists made it, but then decided to split them up and then kill herself, so it hopefully wouldn't have been found. But like, would make a lot of sense because that's the only scientist we saw in the movie, and she's working with that stuff all the time.
Yeah, no shit. That is interesting. I hadn't considered that. Because I kind of take it that this doesn't happen super far in the future.
Yeah.
Like within the next century. Like it was kind of the vibe I was getting, is that it's within the next 100 years. Like they're going back to, it's not like they're going, oh, well, we mapped all of history and this specific moment in time feels like the one. No, I feel like this is, I don't know, 50 to 75 years ago and in the future,
yeah, because there's a lot of like the temporal pincer.
Yeah, the pincer movement.
Yeah, pincer movement. And like there's small ones that happen on like the scale of like 𝗏𝗏 taking Kat in and like them just trying to get it like all on the highway. That's like kind of just like within an hour or less. But then there's like the 10-minute one at the end, the last battle. But then there's this one that Neil explains that like we're in the middle,
like you just got to the middle of it basically.
Yeah, the protagonist has like just begun even, like it's like Neil, they've known each other for so long. They don't say like a specific number or anything.
No, he's like, why do I feel like this is a goodbye for you? And he's like, hey man, he's like, oh shit, dog, what am I about to get up to, man? You know, like that's
and it's so,
and those revelations that makes this movie really, really satisfying. You know, I love the relationship that's formed between the protagonist and Neil. That's something that I just adored about this movie. And again, you know, it's the same principle as the entire movie, you know, like it works forward, it works backwards. This moment works as a final goodbye at the beginning of their friendship for the protagonist, and it works as a final goodbye at the end of a long friendship for Neil. And it's like everything works both ways, which is just bizarre, you know. And
like in, I forgot what country they were. I think it was India. Because that's where the bullets are being manufactured or whatever. They need to go there.
Right, Mumbai.
Where they infiltrated Priya's penthouse. And he's like talking to him like, how are we going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And a waiter comes and like, hey, would you like anything to drink? He's like, I'll take a water. He'll take a Diet Coke. You know, he just knows what he wants. And then the protagonist just thinks like, oh, you've done your homework. You know, like you're
right,
just in the intelligence, you know, kind of job, so like you just done your homework, you know me. Wow, that's impressive. But like, how could he know him if he's a secret agent, you know, from the CIA that is now completely off the books, you know? So like, but now like knowing that he's just known him.
No, that's a good point.
Long.
Yeah, you know, the first act of this movie probably would get a lot better for little things like that.
It's the little details like that, especially with Neil, like Neil and the protagonist. Like
that would be the character that I watched the most closely. Over on a rewatch, you know, because just that, like, it's very clear. The one thing that I didn't even need to rewatch to get was that he was the one who saved him in the opera house. Like, that was the one that I
really,
I
noticed that on
was like, oh shit, yeah. Like, as soon as they showed the little keychain, because at the beginning, I like literally thought to myself, that's a goofy looking keychain, because it was just in the middle of his fucking back, and I was like, they kind of keyed in on it, and I was like, that's.
Yeah, I didn't notice it on first watch at all. But then the second time, I'm like, oh shit, that's Neil. Like, I guess I made it at the end. Like, because I think he even brings it up. He's like, oh, you were the one at the opera? Or like, what? Like, they bring it up. Right. Maybe is it explicitly said, or is it just implied because of the keychain?
I think it's implied because of it. I think he's talking about
it doesn't flash to it, because it flashes to the keychain he sees on the dead body, the person who unlocked the door.
That's what I thought it was. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there is a second flash though, but I don't know. I
don't know if it does flash to the opera or not.
Yeah, it's bizarre the amount of inverting that Neil does.
Yeah, there's like the timeline. Like I watched some videos that like try to walk you through the timeline of like whenever someone's going forward and then inverted, and like the protagonist is pretty normal until like the end when it starts to go a little crazy. But Neil's is like, I mean, this dude is going back and forth a whole lot, and apparently like there's another version of you out there. So there's like 6 Neils at one point, I think.
Yeah.
Like at one point in the movie, there's like 6 of them out there. And I think the fan theory that makes the most sense to me is that Kat's kid Max, like Sater and Kat's kid Max, grows up to be Neil, and that's why like he says like, oh, not even from afar, you know, like at the end there he's like, are you gonna go back to see Kat, you know, or whatever, and he's like, no,
he's like, I kind of want you to be my dad, man.
Yeah, he's like, far too dangerous. Far too dangerous. But he's like, are you sure? Not even from afar? And it's because like he knows what he is going to do. Like Neil knows full well what the protagonist is going to do, and whether it's Max or something, I don't know. They meet at some point, but I feel like Nolan's movies, he always throws in
a
the
little
details.
like, whoa,
are there for that reason. Like, you know, like in Interstellar, a lot of the little details that you wouldn't think mattered, like on first watch, then you watch like many, many times, and you're like, oh no, that's like on purpose. Like these things are kind of thought out, and this
that could be really interesting. You know, I like that theory a lot, and it'd be funny if that's like, you know, he does know what he's gonna do, but like, do you think there's a possibility that he like becomes a sort of father figure to him?
I'd say, yeah. I mean, like in my head canon, like him and Kat are together now, and like he, you know, makes sure I guess Kat's really not in any danger anymore. She's just like an art appraiser, so she can live like a pretty normal life.
Until after killing Priya and stuff, they were set. Yeah.
Because like call me when state your location and your time, and he said like just your location and that's it, right? Is that what he said?
Your location and I think he said time.
Because do you think that's a future because we kind of there is a time jump there in between, just like right at the end battle, and then when he goes up to kill Priya, that's probably like a far more.
I like to think that it's an extremely far ahead version of himself, and like to the point where he gave her this so that he could just get there as soon as possible. And a future version of him was like, now I can get there fucking immediately. You know what I'm saying?
Because like if he knows the location and the time, then after it's happened or before it's happened, he can just
because he went to a couple seconds before that she even said the location and time. It was cool to see him back there, and then they flashed to her going, "Well, I'm here. It's 3:00. It's probably nothing." That little moment. Because
I wonder,
very cool.
I wonder if because I'm always thinking of like the first time that it happens, because like we're on like a loop, and everything's just looping. Like Neil even says like, "I'll get you on the next way around." It's like things that have to happen, or whatever. But like the first time that it does happen, is that future Neil or future protagonist there, or like did he try to go save Kat and then end up like failing, so then in the future,
does this change the course of history? I dig, and that's the thing, is that I have no idea, and that's the other thing though, is that from the story they're telling, it's like it doesn't matter, it's just fun to think about, it's like, because I all in all, the story kind of, it hit me a lot harder than I anticipated it to. It wasn't like it was, it didn't make me tear up or anything, Neil and the protagonist's goodbye probably would have been the moment to do it if anything did. And even then I was just kind of like, this is dope. I was like, bro.
Yeah. I'd say if we saw Neil's perspective for like however long they've known each other, that would have been a lot stronger of goodbye. And like that would have been a little different. But the fact that it's kind of, we have to imply it, it's like, like, oh, and then you get it and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, this is actually like a really...
More of a mind blow to get it from the protagonists.
Yeah. And, that's like the protagonist. They like refer to him as even like Priya calls him the protagonist. Like it's like, and it kind of makes it like in Sator is just the antagonist, it's it's just kind of, you need both. I don't know. Yeah, you kind of need both, but I feel like these future people, like they chose Sador to like do all this stuff, and like because in the crate that had the gold and the plutonium or whatever, there was even like a written note, and like he said, like he got instructions on what to do. So like this was like he was like totally told what to do. It wasn't even his plan at all. Right. But then, is it the protagonist in the future going back, or are the future people choosing him?
Right.
Or is it
him choosing Sador? By choosing Sador, are they automatically choosing, or is there's a dual thing going on there though? Because Neil gets sent to the opera house and he becomes fascinated with the inversion thing, so they had to have picked both of them. In theory, you know what I'm saying? Or unless there's some sort of like rebel movement that the protagonist is the head of, where he's trying to prevent the other future people who want what Sador's doing to stop doing that. Is there something there? Is that what Neil's doing? Because they're trying to stop Sador?
There's so many questions you can ask out of this movie, and I think that's the beauty of it.
And they hardly fucking matter either. It's just like, and that's what's so fascinating about it, is that they could change the story drastically, but they could also not affect it one fucking bit. And that's what's so cool about it. And that's what, and like, It'd been a while since I've watched one of these sorts of things, like in terms of, like there were things that came back around. I'm a sucker for it. Whenever something we saw going in reverse is then in forward,
yeah,
I'm like giggling, bro. Like
That's
I would go, like I'd be like, oh damn, that's like when you saw the Jeep like lighting up the mines in reverse, and then you see Neil driving it up the hill later, and
stop.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh man.
I was like, oh,
the car that flipped initially, and you're like, oh, that's just a random.
That one, I was like, oh, something's gonna happen here.
Yeah, like,
but I didn't even realize it until he like got in the car and started driving. I was like, because I remembered seeing that car going like, why is it inverted? The first time around, I was like,
what the fuck? That car just showed up out of nowhere. Like, it's just there, and Sator's like cool with it. Like, everyone was just kind of like, yep, that car's just in the middle of us right now.
That they tossed that shit across the hood of the car that the protagonist was in. Like, that shit was cool. And I'm a sucker for that shit. So like the things that I sort of like equated this to in my mind, and this has come up a couple of times, and not to the same effect, but Westworld, like whenever stuff starts to come together and you just kind of go, oh damn, like
you have your theories of how you think it's going to connect, but then you see how it actually is like laying out, and it's so satisfying. Like that feeling, I don't know, you can't, like, I'm trying to think of another genre of movies that you really get that in. Like, it's like it's
mostly sci-fi stuff. If you're gonna do it on this like level where it's like so mind bending that you can hardly even comprehend how it works, because there are obviously massive twists and stuff, but rarely the ones that are like, oh, wait a fucking minute, dude. I don't even know if I fully understand how we got here. But like framing the ending as like there will be a team of inverted soldiers who arrive back to camp after the battle before they go into it. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So the red team, they go forward in time.
Yeah.
They're normal people to us, but they have the knowledge from the blue team of how the entire battle went. So like they know everything that is going to happen even before they start. Both teams do. But like that's the thing, is that like it has to be a loop, because like the first time that it would happen, well, I don't know. I'm my mind bends, and I shouldn't like go down.
No, I'm with you though, because like that's the shit that just kind of fucks me up about the movie, is that like I don't think they knew everything the blue team did,
No, that was the briefing that they gave. That was like, we can't tell you everything, but here are the details that the blue team gave us of how the mission went. So it's like everyone
they know what they need to say.
Like, everyone just plays their role that they need to. And like, cause Neil the whole time, he's constantly like, he knows far more than he's putting on. And like way more, he could tell the protagonist like a whole lot, but he can't, because like, he was like, well, if I did tell you this detail, would you act the same way? I don't know. So it's like, he had to keep a lot of details suppressed, because like, he saw the protagonist, like he took off. Like
the callback to the policy is lying. Like the operational policy is lying.
Standard policy,
it's actually suppressing. He's like, you don't lie, you just don't tell the full truth. But the idea that they frame that last battle, like they're like, you see the good guys arriving back. Anyone you see reversed, that's a bad guy. And then to make that a twist where Neil decides to do his own thing, but he knew he was going to do his own thing because he always does his own thing. And again, that goes back to the intuition thing, where it's like, it's almost like he just lets it happen. It's not like it's not like he's like, oh shit, this is what I have to do in this moment. It's just like, he's like, this is what I am doing in this moment, I guess.
Like, I feel like it's like a constant back and forth. Like, the first time this battle happened, maybe the good guys got completely wiped out, but then they went back in time, gave them all the information, and they went through, and then it's now, like, it's maybe constantly getting, like, closer and closer to, like, this
looping
or something. Yeah. And then like, but Neil, I feel like his decisions he made were very in the moment. It was like,
they felt very individual to him.
Yeah.
So is there a possibility that, like,
I feel like what Neil did wasn't supposed to happen, but it is because he does it, and like it is like going back in time. But
and
like,
that's what's confusing. Like,
first loop,
he did not know he was going to die going into this, right? Or does he know this is the end of his life?
I feel like he knows because
yeah.
And I don't know why. I felt like, okay, so he's there's an inverter down there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like down there, and he sees some soldiers walk in. No, because he would have saw himself walk out the other side.
Mm.
But we didn't see that happen, though. Maybe, like, when he inverted himself to pick that lock? No, because he would have saw himself walk out because he had to walk out to go and pick the lock or whatever. But maybe he saw the dead body that was already there. Because would he have been dead yet? Yeah, I'm trying.
Well, that's the thing, is that you can't think like that. Is that like him being alive is happening at the same time as him being dead? You know, because they're technically not the same. They're technically not the same fucking guy. They are. They have the same thought processes and they have the same emotions and everything. And they were seeking the same result to the same mission.
Okay.
But as soon as that guy dies, all he knows is that eventually he's going to have to invert himself again. And then he's just going to have to go and do that shit. Because he does see that body. That's the way he knows he has to go do that, you know?
Okay. So he does see the body. So he sees, like, his own keychain. He knows it's... Does he know that it's his body? You know,
and that's... I think he does.
Like, because
he says, there's only one way. There's only one way to complete the loop. I have to do this.
The way he's talking is like, I know I'm done.
Well, that's the thing, is that I don't think that's the case throughout, like, the entire battle. I think that's the case at the end of the battle.
Yeah.
That he's like, whenever he's talking to him, it only occurred to him recently, like within the last minute, that he's like, oh shit, well, I'm going to fucking die here. You know, it's another great comparison that I kept thinking about throughout the movie. It's just on a much grander scale here is Terminator.
Yeah.
Like
the triangle that has to
happen.
It just has to happen that way, but it breaks your brain to even think about and like how it happens in the first place. Yeah, it's like and that's what, like, why I feel Neil is just the little kid that he grows.
Like, Neil got sent back.
That makes the most sense.
He didn't know, like, same. Well, I looked at Neil as the father of the little kid who knew he would get sent back in time, but had no idea that he would die at the end of the mission.
Whenever you go back in time, it's not you jump to that point in time. You have to be inverted for that long.
True.
So
I was talking about the Terminator.
Oh, okay. Then that.
Yeah, my bad. I was thinking about the father in Terminator who.
Yeah, there's like different kinds of time travel.
Yeah,
there's ones where you can.
Yeah, because he does just jump. I didn't think about that though with the inversion in Tenet. Is that like
you have to
when they go to the opera house or when they go to the airport a week earlier, they experienced an entire week backwards. I didn't consider that.
So if you want to go a year back in time, you have to spend.
You have to live another year.
Like, you have to invert yourself for a year and live inverted for a year, and then.
How long has Neil been inverted, bro?
That's what I'm saying. Is that like but he's old. Like, do you reverse age? Do you if you're inverted, do you get younger?
It would make sense that that's the case. It's how pretty much every other law of the body works.
Like heat is cold. Like everything is opposite.
The longer you live, the younger you look.
So
the longer you live, the younger you literally
maybe Neil's
get.
Not actually the kid. Maybe he is just someone in the future that knows all the stuff that's just been, like, he traveled so far back, and then he got younger. Like, maybe he was an old man. Well, I guess maybe it was the kid.
Is there,
he was old.
Is there the chance that the protagonist we see at the end of the movie also came from that time and has just been working his way back there? And that's the pincer movement, is that he was moving towards that time at the same time as future self was working backwards.
I think I mean, we'll never know. Like, no, yeah. But that makes the most sense.
The protagonists came back with Neil.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why maybe he knew exactly where Neil needed to be, because he knew exactly where he would be, and that's like
Neil knows more, though. Like, Neil at the opera is already using inverted bullet to kill a dude. And
I'm saying that Neil and the protagonist from the future came back in inverted time, and that's why their relationship has been so long, is that they lived all these years together up to this point where the protagonist basically fucked off for a while and let Neil do the shit because he can't interact directly with himself. So basically, he needed his homeboy to hook him up from the past so that his past self would get to the point where he's at now. And like, you know, so like it's Tenet, bro. It's the same forward as it is back.
Yeah. Wow. That's nuts. No, that's like something clicked there. Like,
I feel good about that.
There, and like, and it just gives it like, that's the thing, is that's how grand this story can be. It's like, as wild as your imagination can go, anything can kind of apply. Like, you can think that maybe someone 1,000 years in the future went back and then sent someone that is closer to the time back into the future. You know, like, maybe it wouldn't make sense for someone who's 500 years in the future to actually live for 500 years or something. Maybe it's like
and it works so much more for that last little scene where he saves her from Priya. If he knows, he's like, well, I just got to be here by this time. I got that call eventually. That's just where I've got to be by this time.
Oh yeah. That's 100% what it is. He's like, like,
there's a version of the protagonist that is just living inverted.
Is that an inverted version of him at the end, though? No, he's...
That's where my theory is. Unless he...
not breathing...
Oh, no, that's a good point. Unless he turned back around and he starts living forward. I don't know. Maybe that's...
I guess he would just have to invert to that point.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it's... Maybe he's living inverted, but then an hour before, you know, it's just, let me go, and I'll be in the back of Priya's car, and there you go, and Brett gone.
No, it's a fascinating. Like, I can't even fully wrap my mind around it, which makes me want to dig into more specifics about the story itself instead of the grand scope of things here.
We haven't talked about Kat a whole lot at all, and I think like her part of the story is really cool.
Kat's dope.
Like, she sees her, like, the mysterious woman dive off the yacht, you know, at the beginning of her story, that ends up being her at the end, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, Elizabeth Debicki, by the way.
But like, one of my favorite scenes with her was whenever the protagonist and her met for the first time in the restaurant. And she was explaining, like, how 𝗏𝗏 has the hold over her. And, like, I did this kind, you know, we did whatever, but then he's like, oh, any billionaire would be pissed to lose any of their fortune, you know. He tried to get it back, you know, or whatever. He's like, why? I don't understand. Why is he like, well, there's something that's not clicking. She's like, no, that's how he has his hold over me. He uses that as like a reminder that, like, I don't know, that like it is, because I guess the part that I'm still a little confused on is how that whole blackmail thing started in the first place. Because 𝗏𝗏 uses the painting to blackmail Kat to be like, hey, you did this to me.
I got no fucking clue how the painting thing worked. When there's like a revelation at the end of the movie where he's like, yeah, I had this the whole fucking time. I was like, yo, I didn't realize it was supposed to be gone in the first place. You know, I was lost there. So I won't be able to go with you on this one.
Like this, there was like a real version of it and then a fake.
A forged by this artist from Spain. Yeah.
A good one. And then I'm just confused because there was at some point, Kat was trying to do something to blackmail 𝗏𝗏, I think, in some way, but I don't know how the painting does that at all. But the part I think I do understand is how the blackmail works in the other way, like how 𝗏𝗏 uses it over Kat. Like, just this, like, but I guess why? Like, what? Yeah, the painting is the most confusing part to me. And then, like, because then they're breaking into that facility trying to find it, right? Like, isn't that the whole heist? Or, like, what's the heist that they're doing?
Yeah, it's to get that painting.
The real one? Like, the actual real one?
I believe so. They think the real one's supposed to be there, but I think the fake one is actually there, and 𝗏𝗏 had the real one.
Yeah, somehow. Because that's the thing, if 𝗏𝗏 knows any little detail of anything, then he just goes back and then unravels that plan and makes him, because at the end, they make 𝗏𝗏 think that his plan worked by having the bomb still go off, but just having the algorithm thing out so that he would go on thinking his plan worked, but they know that it didn't at the end of the day or whatever. So, but the painting thing, I think, is the other way around. It's like, he's going to let them think that this painting is there, let him go through with this heist, everything, but he knows he has it the whole time with him.
Right.
So
the whole fucking arc there is kind of bizarre and hard to follow, and that's part of why I think the first act could have benefited from could benefit from a rewatch, because the whole first act for me was kind of just, we're doing this thing, now we're doing this thing, and I didn't really know why we were doing any of the things. It was
very yeah, I mean, like, the first mission and then him dying and getting tortured and then waking up on the CIA boat, I feel like was all pretty normal, easy.
Yeah.
But then when he's like, all right, this bullet, I need to know the materials of it, so I'm going to go talk to...
I'm going to go talk to this guy.
Scientist? Is it the scientist that he talks to first?
Yes. Scientist comes first.
Okay.
Then he goes to Mumbai.
Right. Then he goes to Priya. But he has
to meet Neil.
And then after that, do they go to Michael Caine? And then from Michael Caine to Kat? Where's Michael Caine?
Damn, does Michael Caine come before Mumbai?
And that's the part that it's like, there's so much jumping and getting information from different people that I can't track what's going on there. Like,
no, I'll need to give it a rewatch to tell you for sure exactly the mechanics of the first half.
Definitely go scientist. Definitely. First. Then I think, because Michael Caine is who leads him to Kat, right?
Yes.
Because he tells him all the details of the painting and how all that whatever.
He's the one who explains. He's like, I have a gesture and a word for you.
Michael Caine does that?
I'm pretty sure.
That wasn't the guy on the boat, the CIA guy that, like, when he woke up, he's like, I thought that was the guy that did it on the boat.
Oh, no, I think you're right.
Because Michael Caine was just eating. That's like, I could barely understand, like, half the words he was saying. And then he's like talking.
Yeah, he has the accent as well, so it doesn't help very much.
And I feel like that was done on purpose. Like, I feel like it's like these details don't actually matter. Like, I think it's like, it's all just mumbo jumbo until we can get the actual story started. I feel like, I don't know, because...
Well, and that's the thing, is that I think one thing that I won't give this movie a ton of credit for, like, literal quality wise, is that I think everything that builds up to the airport is there so you can reverse and see what happened at the airport while they're inverted. I think that's the only reason we really did all that. You know what I'm saying? It was so that for the first time you'd kind of go, oh, whoa. And that part I did really appreciate, you know? Like the realizing, oh, Neil saw me and everything. Like that's super fucking cool. But the fact that I'm having a tough time figuring out why they were there at the first place is not... It's not a credit to this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
The painting thing is the most confusing part to me. But then once they, like, get on the highway and that starts happening, then I'm like...
That hardly matters anymore.
Yeah, I'm all...
Until the end when they go, hey, I have this. And you're kind of like, what? And I'm like, I don't know why I'm supposed to feel that way.
Yeah, talk about how Sador died though. Man, how brute! Like showing him fold, like and just like before he oh my god, like that was brutal. The kitchen scene, I think I'm debating on what my favorite scene is, and it is either like the highway kind of.
Yeah, that was the first time I kind of went, oh, wait a minute.
Like he's inverted. Like there's a lot, I guess I don't know when it starts and when it ends because there's a whole lot there. Like because then he inverts and then we see it all over again. So I don't. But I really like just like when it was first happening, like when the maneuver, like they had all the trucks around the two cars.
Right. Yeah, that was a contender for me as well. Like the trapping him in literally was like, oh damn! Like if you can do that, you can really fuck some shit up if you manage
they needed
that.
to keep him moving so that the GPS people tracking him wouldn't think anything's wrong. Because that's another detail that I think is really cool is that like if you leave any paper trail or anything digital, they will know it in the future to go back and make sure that doesn't happen. So it's like you have to leave everything off the books. And it got me thinking that's like I have my memories in my head of like what I did yesterday. No one knows any of that other than me. And then if I don't write it down, if I don't put it on the internet, if I don't do any of that, it's going with me to my grave. And no one could ever figure anything of that out. And that's why Sador's like obsessed with the details. Before he like went into the little inverter, he was like, make sure you text me or like you tell me every little detail of everything that's going on because he somehow needs to know in the future or else he can't do anything about it. And so that's why like the highway scene, like all of those thoughts like were just kind of going on at once. I really liked that. But man, I just I don't know why I liked it so much, but just it followed the protagonist meeting Kat and then he's like, "Oh, well, these guys are just here to beat him up, and they're like get back into the kitchen whatever." But that brawl that was in the kitchen, I don't know. I really like just for the
I ordered my hot sauce an hour ago.
That's my line. I don't know. I heard that and I'm like, yes. It's funny and there's a way more meaningful lines in this movie, but I don't care. That one I
love that. So, that's fucking funny.
I think I'll keep that as my line and I'll give nod to that scene, but I think I have to give the highway heist scene.
Hey, it's
the actual
it's more than deserving there.
Because I mean, like did they actually drive did they do that in real life, like did they actually stomp on the brakes and like keep it going? Like I don't I'm wondering like how much of that is real and how much of it isn't. Because I mean I've seen behind the scenes of like him actually on the the fire truck ladder like swinging over and like doing stuff. Like they were actually doing that and moving down the highway while they were doing it. But maybe like they didn't actually crush the cars in between, maybe they just kept it all going or something like that. But I don't know. I really loved the highway heist. I don't know what to call it. But that pincer movement that happened there, I really liked.
No, that was fire. I did really, really appreciate that. My favorite scene, I think just because like it is the emotional oomph of the movie is Neil's goodbye. I loved that moment because you can tell that John David Washington, and this was the moment where I considered giving him the performance nod. It hadn't even really occurred to me up until this point. You can tell he feels the importance of this moment and doesn't know completely why it's important.
Yeah.
The way that he is tearing up, crying, and he's like, "Hey dog, I don't know why this feels like such a massive fucking moment. Maybe it's because you've saved my life like 3 fucking times now, and that's all I really need to know. But it seems like you like love me, dog. You fucking with me, like like that's I love that moment. So I had to give that the respect there.
That transcends through time and whatever. In Interstellar, Anne Hathaway goes off and is like, I don't understand it. We don't understand it. Maybe that's the one thing that is keeping us all connected or whatever. And who knows? Maybe he does have that feeling for a reason. Like it's that. I guess it was kind of implied. Like Neil was kind of speaking as like a goodbye already, and he's like, "Why are you talking like that, man? Like what's going on here?
What's going on, bro?"
It's like, and then when he starts tearing up, man, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great fucking moment from John David Washington, and that's something that when it comes to John David Washington, I've always known him to be a solid actor, but I've never viewed him. He's Denzel Washington's son. He's got a lot living up to do.
Shoes to fill.
And so I've obviously you don't want to compare Denzel Washington to much of anybody because that's not going to go well for much of anybody. But naturally, when you're watching John David Washington in something, he is Denzel Washington's son, and that's front of mind. This is my favorite thing I've watched John David Washington in. And but I've seen him in like Ballers, the HBO show. I've seen him in Black Klansman. He was in Malcolm and Marie. And none of those. He's very solid in Black, and that's again, he's solid in all of this. Like he's solid in everything. But he's never given me like a wow factor, like, oh, John David Washington's in this. I gotta see it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not something that's happened with him yet. And maybe it will eventually. And this one is getting me more excited for him in the future. But he did really good. He held up very well in this movie.
I think he's an action star. Like action is his vein, because whenever he's fighting or just running or like, I don't know, he makes it look intense, like pull-ups, when he's just training in the windmills, like doing pull-ups, or like on the boat doing pull-ups. Like, I don't know, I think his dialogue, like delivery, wasn't like the best throughout everything. I'm giving him my performance for the movie overall. Just I think like for the action and like him having to actually be confused, and like portray like I think it was a lot of facial acting that he did.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Movie. That was really, really good. But the dialogue is just so mindfucky in the first place that it's like, and it's so exposition heavy that it's very tough. I think Robert Pattinson did a way better job with like the delivery of everything like that. But I think like the overall like amount of screen time he's on, like he's here for the whole movie. He is the protagonist, and man, I love seeing him in the action scenes. Like that kitchen scene when he's beating the fuck out of those guards, like just
when he's getting his shit kicked in the ending too, man. Like even then, he's not winning that fight, but goddamn, is it fun to watch? Like he makes that a little bit electric. That's a good point.
The torture when he's being tortured in the train tracks, and like he's all like just broken. He has to dive down, take that pill, and I don't like all that stuff. Like I don't know. I really liked just him in this movie. I think it's partially because he is Denzel's son that I'm giving him the nod. I mean, I love my boy Denzel, so I don't know. And that clicked like halfway through this movie. Like I think it was in that kitchen scene. Like I knew that he was Denzel's son. I heard it before, but then while watching, it didn't hit me at the beginning.
You're like, man, this kid could be Denzel's son. Wait,
and I'm like, and then when he's fighting people, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's actually in real life Denzel's son. And then I'm like, oh, it's just so cool. So
I love that. I loved him in this movie. I really did. He was, and that's the thing, is that the performances all around in this movie are extremely strong. Like, it's saying something when John David Washington did incredible in this movie. And I don't know that I'd put him top 2, maybe top 3, like
acting, like actual, like with emotion and like dialogue delivery,
playing with a character. Like there's a lot that Elizabeth Debicki had to do that I thought she did fantastic. And as Kat, I thought that you kind of mentioned that with the protagonist, John David Washington's just kind of along for the ride. Yeah. So instead of doing a lot of the acting, he's doing a lot of the reacting. He's kind of responding to every situation while everyone else makes the situations happen. So it caused like Robert Pattinson as Neil to be very, very good in this movie. I think this is one of my favorite Robert Pattinson roles, and there's not a lot that you'll ever catch me saying that I didn't like him in, but he did fantastic in this. My actual favorite performance, and I was so happy to give it to him here, it's going to be Kenneth Branagh as 𝗏𝗏. Like, I thought he had a lot of heavy lifting to do for that very reason that I just said. Like, he is pushing the story forward in almost every regard, because if he stops, then there's no fucking movie. He's just got to keep doing his fucked up shit.
crazy how low he is on the list on IMDb. Why? He's below Priya, Neil, Stewart, Crosby, all the SWAT guys. That's I don't know. It's insane how low on the list he is. I don't know like how they determine that order.
I'm not sure either.
But no, I knew I recognized him from Dunkirk. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen this guy somewhere, but like, man, what is he in? And then you were like, oh yeah, he was in. I think he's in Tenet. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, he's in Tenet, but I didn't even remember he was '𝗏𝗏. You know, like the main antagonist of the movie.
Yeah, he's the guy here,
and he did such a good job as the
villain. Thing for me that was really impressive is that I think Christopher Nolan is he's got incredible talent for story. Like, this is what is going to happen to the characters, and this is what will push the movie forward, and this is what everything will culminate in. What I don't think he has particular strength with often is character work. I think he does. I think he's solid at it. Again, it's similar to John David Washington for me, where he's solid at acting. You know, he's solid at writing it. It's more than enough to get him by, obviously. But there's I don't feel like a lot of personality usually comes through in his movies. You know, it often feels like everyone's kind of playing roughly the same character. And this one, I feel like the actors elevated it a lot. Like they took the material they were given and they kind of make it what it is. You know, because I think that you could make an argument that Neil and the protagonist are written incredibly similarly. There's a bunch of revelations with Neil later on that make him like, oh shit, but he doesn't let that on for a really long time. You know, like he acts like he's experiencing the stuff with the protagonist. But you don't get the sense that Robert Pattinson and JDW are playing this at all the same way. You know, like they have personalities, and I owe that to the actors. I don't think that he wrote a lot to make that the case. And then with a villain, 𝗏𝗏 I think he's very cookie cutter for a villain. Like he's what you would expect the antagonist of a story to be.
Yeah.
And I think,
I mean, man,
just a dick.
Like whenever he takes off his belt, puts the cufflinks on the belt, and like that scene, man, like I don't know, he does it very well. And
that's what I'm like. I think he elevates the shit out of that character, Kenneth Branagh, because he also has a bunch of terrible dialogue that like. That part where he's talking about chopping off his balls and shoving them in his throat, and it's very funny to watch a man choke on his balls. Like I was like,
yeah,
I just kind of like rolled my eyes, but like I didn't literally though, because Kenneth Branagh did enough with it to make me go like, this is somewhat believable. You know, like I believe that this man would say that.
He's a bad dude, an arms dealer, but way worse. I remember someone's like, "Oh, he's just an arms dealer," or like whatever. He's like, "No, he's way worse than that." But I love that scene, that dinner that they're having.
That's a really good scene.
Like John David Washington there, I really liked him there. Like, you know, what have you had sex with my wife yet? Or he's like, no, not yet. Or like, he's like, not yet. Like the little one-liners he had in there, like were pretty good. Like the hot sauce one, the not like that one, not yet. I felt like there was maybe one more.
No, he was pretty funny.
But yeah, like pretty funny at times, and that's why I gave it to him. Was like a lot of like he was just there, and he's the protagonist. Like he is, I think, like just the main part of the story. So maybe it's more like fitting to give him the character nod. But I mean, I don't
just
think
someone who's a much more likable character.
I mean, man, and likable, and just. I think the story is way more interesting, and that's Neil. Like Neil is just Neil's so cool. Like and like him saying like he has a PhD in physics. I wonder if that's just a lie to cover up the fact that he's just from 50 years in the future or whatever it happens to be, and he just knows all, like it's just second nature to him by now, and all this stuff. But like I love Neil is I feel like the most interesting character to me, and like him. Like you get the moment of Neil taking off the protagonist mask, looking at him, but then being like,
okay, I got to do some other shit then.
Yep,
Which
like,
is,
I'm
again,
going.
like, he doesn't know all the like, he was sent back with the information that almost sometimes it feels that way, where it's like, he didn't know that was going to happen. You
Didn't
know?
he?
I took that to be,
It
he
kinda
didn't know
looked-
he was going to pull off the protagonist's mask. The moment he does, he realizes, you're doing the right thing. I can't fuck with you. Whatever you are doing, I have to go with. So he just lets him go and doesn't even think about it. You know, like I think that's it. I don't think that he necessarily
because
knew
the one
exactly whose mask he was
rule,
pulling off or anything.
like the one rule of all of this is like you can't come into contact with yourself. Like
Mhm.
if you do, goodbye.
Yeah.
And like I wonder if it was just like he knows that like
He's
he is
coming.
in.
You better.
Well, yeah, he probably doesn't know that in this specific moment that he's going to see the protagonist. But
Yeah.
then when he does see them, he's like, oh, whatever is going to happen has happened. Like
you are further along in the mission than I am.
Yeah.
You know, like,
oh, okay, yeah, that would, because
that was him who came back from, like, John David Washington was the version of him that came back from the future. And he'd reverted into forward by that point.
All he would need to see is his face, and like he knows the one that he's been with traveling forward in time is right there, and he's like, if he sees his face, he's like, oh, okay, well, you are past me right now. You are in the okay. I was thinking of it as like he was in the know of all of this, so that when he saw the protagonist, he was like, okay, now I just have to let you go.
And that's the thing, is that the way I read Robert Pattinson in that moment, it's not necessarily the writing of the moment that kind of gets me there. It is the way that he reacts. It's like a dawning of realization almost paired with shock, like kind of like you fucking go. I get it. You know, like not a real like, oh, I knew this was coming, but like I'm smart enough and have experienced this enough to gather what is happening here, you know?
So if they do have a really long relationship, eventually.
Right.
Wouldn't one version of a Neil have to actually know, like, all... Well, I guess it'd have to be, like, in a paper trail, or, like, specifically these details be known, so how would... the protagonist would literally have to tell him, like, "Oh yeah, no, that was."
Like, the rules don't work different from Neil as they do for everyone else. He can't. He literally can't be told every detail.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes more sense. Is that he is surprised at first? He's like, "What? Like that's not what I was expecting." Then he's like, "Oh, it has to be okay."
Because
you're right.
That's the whole thing. It's fascinating how much of this movie is built on the idea of faith. Like he's like. I think 𝗏𝗏 is like, you have blind allegiance. You have no idea why you're fighting what you're fighting for. You know, like, you have no idea what you're doing. And Neil knows what the goal is, but he's just kind of got to trust the process, dog. He's just got to be like, if I feel like I'm supposed to do this in the moment, whatever happens, happened. You know, like, I can't change course from something I don't know is going to happen. So I just do what I feel is right. And that's probably what I did before or later or whatever the fuck.
Opera is one of the words in the square. I didn't even see that. And like the magic. Yeah, opera is one of the word. Satyr, it's the middle one. But then opera backwards is 𝗏𝗏𝗏.
𝗏𝗏𝗏.
They said
that was something. That was the painter. That was the painter who painted the faux version of the painting. You said 𝗏𝗏, and I was like, oh my god, wait a fucking minute. Yeah, that's a thing.
Wait a minute. Okay, then what is satyr backwards? Rotas, ROTAS.
Okay. Let's see.
I don't know about. Maybe was that the scientist's name that?
Yeah, like Rotus.
Tenet. Explained by the Tenet Square. Wow, yeah, there's a whole article that.
Oh my god. in addition to performing stunts backwards, the main cast actually had to learn how to speak in reverse.
Wait, because whenever their lips moved, I didn't even think about that. Because, like, obviously it's not like they're reversing the audio. It's just their lips had to match. They probably voiced over the audio in reverse, but then their lips had to match those movements. So they had to actually talk backwards.
I guess they could reverse the dialogue. But regardless, like, whenever you look at someone on the opposite side of the glass, looking like they're speaking backwards, like their lips don't match forward words, they have to be saying
that's right. There is some, like they use like a walkie-talkie that clears it up eventually, you know, that's like, but there is a little brief period in there where it is actually talking backwards. Yeah. Oh,
but Sir Kenneth Branagh not only had to learn to speak backwards, but he also had to do it with the character's Russian accent. So he was doing that backwards.
That's nuts. That's nuts. Man, this square thing is kind of blowing my mind right now, and it's besides the point of the movie. But like, I was reading it just horizontally because that's how humans read. But it's like it's the same horizontally and vertically. Like it's like that's like
no matter which way you're looking at it,
it's like every single way you look at it. Wow, but yeah, I don't know, because 𝗏𝗏 being the painter, that's interesting. I wonder if 𝗏𝗏, ROTAS, that doesn't ring a bell in the movie though.
No, it doesn't. 𝗏𝗏 immediately clicked for me.
Huh. Yeah, I don't. And it's really like when you try to Google it, a lot of it's just like the actual tablet is popping up. Oh, how will 𝗏𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏 come into play in this?
Just another fun fact, you were speaking to the athleticism of John David Washington. He's more athletic than your average actor, as he once held his college's single-season rushing record and took a shot at the NFL. So he was a college football running back.
Like, it looks like he can run. Like, I don't know, like, whenever he's running out of the opera, like, full sprint before it explodes, but into, like, the back of the van, like, I don't know. It's just, like, every time he runs, I was like, man, this
dude can fucking book it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he said the filming was so relentless that he couldn't run for over a month after shooting some of the action scenes. There were days where he couldn't even get out of bed, according to him.
Wow. That's... I'm not as mad or not as disappointed at giving him the performance now. Like he actually had to put in like a physical performance. Who was Fiona Dourif? What is her character? Because someone said that Wheeler, Fiona Dourif's character, was the English equivalent for 𝗏𝗏, I guess.
Yeah, Spanish to English. 𝗏𝗏.
Oh yeah, I guess that does sound very Spanish. Broken, I guess, is what it, at least that's what Google Translate says.
The broken ones.
But anyways, that is really cool that 𝗏𝗏 ended up being in there. I didn't think, like, I didn't even get that at all. I would never have remembered that. But man, yeah, I'm reading some of the trivia now too. Like, and I'm curious on how real the highway scene was. But that airplane that crashed into a hangar, that was real. Yeah, that was.
It looked real too. Like, it had an essence there that was like, there was, if it was visual effects, it was the greatest visual effects I've ever seen. Because like, when you can tell they just like set a camera up in the hangar and we're like, all right, let's crash this bad boy into there. We got one shot at this.
Yeah, we got one. Let's get as many angles as we can, while we're doing this.
It hits and you see the camera like shake. Like that's natural. That didn't just, they didn't Photoshop that in, like that's some real shit. But, no, and that's another thing that I appreciate about Christopher Nolan. The more that I dig into him, is that everything feels so practical. Like, he has such a fascinating way of blending the visual effects with this really heavy hitting, real feeling action. that kind of reminds me of like Mission Impossible, where it's like the action, you can tell the action is being done right there in front of you. The setting might be a little bit dramatized, but it's that's some shit that they're really doing.
I found what 𝗏𝗏 means in the movie.
Yes.
It is the name of the security company in the movie. I'm assuming that's referring to the like keeping all the art like at the airport, what they crashed the airplane into, I think. Or is that the security company? 𝗏𝗏? What other security company would there be?
Maybe the guys who show up to protect the opera.
Yeah. The security company that 𝗏𝗏 hires is called 𝗏𝗏 Security. Okay, so it's actually 𝗏𝗏's guys, I guess.
Okay, which makes sense.
Oh, in Latin, not Spanish. Okay, that makes more sense. This tablet is Latin. It is that old. That makes more sense. But 𝗏𝗏 means wheel in Latin.
That makes sense.
So, but I guess it's so there. But yeah, you were right. The former lover Thomas Arepo. The paint was, that's the painting. I can't believe. Wow, I did not pick up on that whatsoever. But I guess I didn't know about this tablet.
Yeah, no.
Like
as soon as you said Arepo, that was the only reason. I didn't even think about. Well, what's opera backwards? You know, like that didn't occur to me. You know, and I don't even think that like affects anything. It's just little details about the movie that become more fascinating the more you learn about it. But let's see.
In order to shoot and elaborate the forward and reverse car chase scene with very few or no visual effects, a team of 20 top drivers from California was assembled. Later joined. Wow. So I guess a lot of that was actually real, which is, I mean, that's the thing, is that a lot of it, like, it looks like they just really did a lot of
Someone's
it.
just cruising in reverse, you know?
All
the visual effects being done is making the tires look like they're spinning the other way. Like, that's...
And, like, I think, my shot, there's one that looks really pretty. Not a pretty scene, but it's when he's getting tortured in the train tracks, and it's, like, just very symmetrical. It's, like, kind of a wide shot. You see, like, all the way down the tracks, him, like, sitting in the middle. Looking really pretty. So that might be my shot just for, like, a freeze frame. But if I can take a shot that happened over the span of a couple seconds, it's that building at the end that exploded, put itself back together, and then exploded again. And I was just like, I'm like, no, I'm like, okay, they filmed that, but then they just did it in reverse. But then it's like, no.
Was that like the exact middle point of the battle then? Is that what that means?
It happened at 5 minutes, I think. I'm pretty because they looked at their watch and they're like, we're coming in on a shockwave or something. Like, you know, something happened at 5 minutes and that makes the most sense.
That
like,
the forward team did, because that's literally what happened. The forward team did the same thing the backwards team did, so that it just...
So it was... Because it blew up twice. Yeah. So, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Because
and that's why they can't come out from their hiding spots, because if they get seen by the other team, they're fucking dead. That's it. That's why it doesn't matter if they...
Yeah, and that one poor dude that got trapped into that building.
Get out of there! That would be horrific. Horrific way to die.
Yeah.
What that gentleman just went through.
But I think
favorite shot.
I'll go with the building, not the train. I think I have to go with the building. Just
it's gnarly.
Yeah, I loved it. But
it was like a 1 second cutaway, where it was just 𝗏𝗏 barely lit up. It's like a mostly black screen, except for what you see with 𝗏𝗏 and like a window to his left. And there's like a red light that flashes past that window, and it like brushes over 𝗏𝗏 as he's like walking towards the camera. I thought it was fucking awesome. Like as soon as I saw it, just one of those visual cues that's like, this is the fucking bad guy, you know? And I adored it. So
I loved the like red and blue like that's colors that cool. not just like the patches that they had on, but like the actually in the like inversion room, like in it. There's a science reason why it's red and blue. Like red shifted light is like what you would see from the future, and then like if it's blue shifted, you're looking back, and it's like there's an actual like which is pretty cool. But like I think just visually, this is I don't think it stacks up to Dunkirk's visuals. I don't think. But this one was, I don't know, a lot. I liked the visuals in here, and the colors and everything that it used. It was a lot more colorful of a movie than
yeah,
give
I
Nolan
thought
credit
that
for.
It's been interesting to watch this project make me kind of eat my words about how I felt about Christopher Nolan's movies and like the color palettes of them and stuff. Like in my head, I had them very blue, gray, white, just kind of dark, neutral color tones. And these obviously still play with those, but there's a lot of moments where like he just has a very specific way he shoots nighttime. And a lot of his movies take place at night. So that's just kind of what a lot of shit looks like a lot of the time. But there were a lot of moments that kind of stood out visually as far as like being like, oh, this is weird. Like whenever it's like so bright in the background that it's basically like a white backdrop because that's where the sun's beating from. Like that was pretty, you know?
He's not focused on making every single shot look pretty. I think it's more of like, I'm going to show you something visually that shouldn't make sense, and that's what's going to blow your mind, instead of like using the colors and the lighting and everything like that. But there are some times where he, like, where you can tell like he really did care, like the red, like your shot, like that's very specific, and maybe that's more on the cinematographer sort of thing. And is this 𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏?
Yeah, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm so glad he's shooting Oppenheimer too, because
the scale of it, man. He knows how to capture something fucking big, and he's goddamn good at it.
Yeah, it's this one. I don't know. It's like, again, I don't think it visually stacks up to Dunkirk. Like that was just visually incredible the whole time. I felt like, and I was like, and like the colors were actually a lot more or maybe not vibrant, but noticeable. I noticed the colors in Dunkirk a lot more than Tenet. But not to say that it looked terrible. Like there were a lot of shots that were really nice. Like even when he steps out into the inverted world for the first time, and like you see the bird flying backwards, like him reverse step into the puddle, like in him, like that. I don't know, was super cool, and like just on a technical side is a really cool shot. But maybe just visually is not necessarily like the most beautiful thing to look at. But it's more of like, it's more beautiful for your brain and not your eyes, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. Yeah, no, it's fascinating because you got to perform that scene backwards too.
Yeah, like I could probably walk backwards, but I'd really have to think about it, because
like making that look natural, because every step you got to go heel to toe, not toe to heel.
Yeah, because if you walk backwards naturally, it looks like you're walking backwards. And if you reverse that, it's like, okay, something's going to be off. But like to have to actually walk backwards, like, yeah, it's like so many things, like your arms have to sway naturally.
And to even think that the scene's literally acted backwards from the jump. He starts the scene in the car. From an acting perspective, he starts the scene in the car, and he kind of has to lose realization the further back he gets. And it's kind of like, it's not just literally what he's doing, it's the way that he is reacting that has to be backwards too.
And he like so he went from like running to walking, and then you're right, he got more confused as time went on. So it looked, he was naturally doing it at the beginning of the shot, and then as it went, oh my god, I didn't even think about that.
No, it's like, that's what's impressive. Like whenever you think about the backwards acted scenes,
you
know, like it's something that's it's impressive stuff.
Kind of like a stop motion appreciation, like the same appreciation I got for like Fantastic Mr. Fox or Isle of Dogs. Is like, that's kind of like the same vein. Is like
very meticulous,
craft and just everything you had to think of in doing that, and then the action. But like on this thing, like that's an actual person doing those things like that. Yeah, I don't know. That's crazy. I wonder how many times they had to do that to get it right. And make
probably plenty.
Look good.
Well, and that's the thing, is that like the stunt that's happening when John David Washington's fighting John David Washington, that's happening, and one of them is acting backwards, save for when they're like literally defying the laws of physics, you know, like
Yeah.
Like whenever they're like going like fist fighting, one of them is acting backwards while the other is.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, and so there's some stunt guy in the suit. Like that's really convenient for it to be a suit. And also it would break, all reality if they actually saw that it was him.
Exactly.
But like, yeah, credit to the stunt people too.
That team's
like
fucking crazy, man.
That's insane. Yeah,
no, it's impressive stuff.
Breaks my brain.
And like thinking about like why he shot the gun.
Yeah. Is he unloading it?
I think he's unloading it and also making him like they're face to face. If he gets a good enough look, he's fucked. So like you just set the gun off.
It's never like he knows it's going to actually hit him. He's like
he's
to the
missing.
side, like because you can't kill him.
Can't kill himself.
Yeah, you can't. Obviously he doesn't want to do that. Like he knows that that's him.
The thing is that in theory he could, because like the thing that Neil says later on about the paradox, where he's like, well, what gives me hope is that we're here, which means that we probably succeed. And he's like, well, if it helps you to think like that, sure, but that's not the case. You exist because you existed. But there will be another version of you that will that won't exist if like it's.
I thought it was that, like he's like, yeah, the grandfather paradox. You go back in time. He's like, well, what's the answer? He's like, well, we don't know. It's a paradox. And then he's like, what happens if I do? And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. 𝗏𝗏 and those people think that way. They do think you can. So we have to try to counteract that, sort of thing.
Right.
Because that is really weird to think about. If he does accidentally like kill himself right there,
I don't think that he just fades away.
No, he would just keep being inverted.
It would just break the loop.
If he wants to invert the other way, then he would eventually
die.
But then the other person needs to go back to kill him. It's a paradox, it is a constant. Like we will never find the answer because it doesn't make sense. But no, any movie or anything that gets the audience to use their imagination to fill in the gaps, I think is like that's what makes like Star Wars and stuff so magical. Is that like there are some certain stuff that are like that is explained to you. But until it is, like, you just have to, like, it's magic. It's like, oh, well, it's happening up here in my brain, and it's different, a little bit different for everyone else. And I think Tenet is, like, it's kind of follows that same thing, and, like, it's time travel, so I guess there are some rules to it and stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that is definitely just movie magic, and that you just have to fill in the gaps for. And I love whenever that can happen. In a movie, and this one just gets me to think like crazy. Like after the movie's done, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to sleep normally tonight. I'm going to have some weird
my mind's running with this thing. But let's you think you're ready to throw a rating at this bad boy? You think it's about that time?
Yeah, I think we are. I'm comfortably enjoying this more than The Prestige.
Yes,
and that's at an 8. Dunkirk was at a 9.5, and
we briefly discussed this off mic. I think we're in different places where we appreciate this compared to Dunkirk. Like I'm imagining you are going, well, if that's a 9.5, this has to be a 9.5. Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah.
I'm confidently between The Prestige and Dunkirk. Like I'm confidently 9. Ooh. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay.
So
okay, now that I'm thinking, Dunkirk has you in the whole time, and it's just a chaotic, oh my god, the whole time. But the first act of this movie,
I think I would even be comfortable meeting you in the middle there, though. Like a 9.25, I could see me going up because, to speak to you there, like you were granting me a little credence for the lack of fulfillment in the first act. The last 2 acts are fucking awesome, and I had a great time watching them. For a movie to save itself, from my opinion of it, is That doesn't happen a lot. And for the first 40 minutes, I went, I do not like this movie. And I think
that's true.
On a rewatch, I don't think that would be the case.
There's no part in Dunkirk.
I coming out the other side going, oh, I like this movie, makes the last 2 acts all the more impressive. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm confident that if I did watch the first 40 minutes again, I would not feel the same way I did. And that deserves a little bit of credit, you know? Like, so I'd be comfortable meeting you in the middle there and splitting it at 9.25 for enjoyment.
I like that. And I think I actually agree with the 9.25, putting it a little bit below Dunkirk, because Dunkirk doesn't have that at all. The whole movie is great. There's no act that I'm like, that first act I really
was talking about Oppenheimer here in a couple weeks, or next week. The movie I'm going to watch before I go see Oppenheimer is Dunkirk. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair.
Not just because it works as a pretty good double feature, in my opinion, but because tonally that's what I'm expecting, and that's kind of what I want his films to be. You know, I don't think that I'm going into Oppenheimer going, you know what, I'm going to watch Interstellar the night before.
That's true.
It doesn't feel like the right vibe. But and Dunkirk, it's also a movie that in the future I might watch it a couple times before I see Oppenheimer. If I'm being for real, like I enjoyed that a lot, and I want to rewatch it for different reasons than I want to rewatch Tenet. I want to rewatch Tenet so that I can get stuff. I want to rewatch Dunkirk so that I could just watch it again.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah. No, I like that. And because Tenet has a little bit of like that, like humanitarian sort of like vein in it. Like they even mention Oppenheimer a little bit in like the Manhattan Project, stuff like that. But like Dunkirk, that's like, I don't know. I really hope that that's like kind of the tone that Oppenheimer takes.
That'd be really cool. And that's the thing, is that I think Dunkirk, I think it has just a lot more heart in it, where this felt very meticulous and calculated almost. Not to say that it doesn't feel like the creators put their all into this. It's very clear that they did. And, but that is the difference between, for my money, Tenet and Dunkirk. You know, like Dunkirk feels like it has a much more personal touch, where this feels like they were, you know, Dunkirk won a bunch of technical Oscars, but it feels like with this they are trying to win a bunch of technical Oscars. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
yeah, they visual effects and production design. Okay. Let's see, any Kansas City film critic? Man, what the heck is going on, Kansas City? We haven't had
Nolan
one in
fans,
such a long
Kansas
time.
City.
Yeah, we haven't had one in such a long time, but
I feel like it was like Rushmore that had one for some fucking reason or something like that.
But okay, I like 925. I do agree with that. I'm there. Now critically, is it as well made as Dunkirk?
What do we give Dunkirk?
9.25.
It's not. I don't think it is. I don't think it is on any ground, actually.
No.
That's a different kind of movie where I do think his character work in this is actually stronger than it is in Dunkirk, as far as, you know, actually exploring characters a little deeper. That's just because the story lent itself to that a little bit more.
Is it as well made as The Prestige at a 9?
I think this movie is, I think it's better than Prestige in every regard except performances.
I think I like
maybe writing.
I think
the story of Tenet is better, but the writing of
the execution of it, maybe. I don't know. Like maybe I don't know what I would want. Not like the second and third act. I don't want a thing to change about them, really, in Tenet. But I don't know, maybe if the first act is done some other way. I don't know how. But I think, like, The Prestige is very...
There's this thing with The Prestige that lets itself kind of breathe. I feel like this is just... I don't feel like it ever fucking stops.
Go. Yeah, we are all gas, no brakes here. Like, the only breaks we get are the dinner. We're like... Sator's like, yeah, have you fucked my wife? No, not yet. All right, I'm going to kill you. Oh, okay, now I know this information. All right, now we're on. Now we're going. It's like you sit down for 30 seconds, and then that's it. But in The Prestige, you actually get, like, I don't know, just a lot more character, just a chance to sit with your character and like see what happens in their brain, how, just a chance for them to act and not react. I think that was a very nice thing you said about like John David Washington, is that he is reacting a lot of the time. But in The Prestige, I mean, it was all an act. Like, I mean, everything was an act. Like even the story was.
Yeah,
so,
literally.
I mean,
no, it is interesting to compare all these movies because I don't feel that vastly different about them. I don't think
they're all incredibly well made.
They're all incredibly well made.
No one doubts Nolan's movie making capability. I don't think.
And so when it comes to comparing it to, I find myself enjoying this a lot more than The Prestige, but I guess I can't honestly tell you if it's better.
I think some of the practical stuff, just what they actually had to do, is very impressive.
Maybe we give it a little bump for that reason, because I don't think I certainly can't tell you it's worse than The Prestige. I don't think. I think that I'm looking at two movies that are roughly of the same quality.
So it's either a 9 or, because it either ties Dunkirk at a 9.25 or is The Prestige at a 9.
Oh, then it's tying The Prestige at a 9. I didn't know what we had them at.
Yeah, Dunkirk's at a 9.25. So,
gotcha.
I think
I'd even
bump Dunkirk up like a 9.5, and then this.
Yeah, I was like either bump Dunkirk up to a 9.5 or move both The Prestige and Tenet down to an 8.75. Like, I feel like the gap between those and quality is bigger than a quarter of a point, in my opinion.
I do think so as well. I don't know. I think maybe we're a little too nice with The Prestige. I mean, I think we said the performances were very, very good. That's what carried it through a lot. And the story was really, I don't know, it was just
the story's like, and that's the thing, is that like I'm left in a very similar place to Tenet, where I'm like, the performances were awesome and the stories were dope. Visually, it's satisfying, but it's not his best work ever. It's like those are very similar movies in essence, as far as the way I feel about them. So, like, you know what? To go ahead and roll with what we've given it. Like, I don't want to change anything. That's we gave the movie what we gave the movie. I can only base it off now. What happened. So I'm gonna go 9 out of 10 quality, which I don't think.
Well, that's perfect, because the average makes it work out perfectly. Like, I think, because Dunkirk is at a 9.33. Tenet would come out to a 9.08 or a 9.1, basically, and then The Prestige is at an 8.7 or an 8.67. So like, Tenet is in between The Prestige and Dunkirk on average, and I feel like that's right. Like, that feels good. That's definitely right. That order, I think, goes right there. For me, just like overall, I think I put Tenet above Dunkirk because of all the satisfaction and of the sci-fi stuff that I can get. But if I just want like a critically the better made movie is Dunkirk. I think that's without a doubt. But Tenet it just has that sci-fi aspect to it, so it's automatically.
I mean, this thing coming out of here with a 91 is way fucking better than I thought it was gonna do, and that's why I got to give it some props. It feels it surprised me a lot. We haven't had on the director's spotlight. We haven't had a lot of opportunity. Like, man, this one surprised me. We have that a lot with the comic book movies, and like that sort of thing. We're like, this one, I didn't realize that I would like this one. I didn't realize how good it was, and that hasn't happened to me yet. This is the first time that's happened to me on the director's spotlight. So I'm sitting in a place where I'm very satisfied with Tenet, and I'm happy to give it such a good rating. Got a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb, and I can't imagine it did that much better on Rotten Tomatoes. If I recall correctly, this movie did not do well. It was not well received.
Let's see, 69% critically and 76 audience. Letterbox, let's see a 3.4 on Letterbox. My Nolan list, it's number 3 for me of including the Dark Knight trilogy. Like, Interstellar is still my king. I don't think that's ever going to be beat.
Yeah,
I rewatched The Dark Knight last night, and
as did I.
I didn't know if it was above Tenet or not, but that rewatch solidified it at number 2, and then Tenet is my 3. But Dunkirk is, it's like right there. Like, they're basically tied for third. It's just what mood am I in? Am I in a sci-fi
I actually
mood?
have this is interesting. I have a bit of a gap there. Like mine's 1, 2, 3, Interstellar, Dark Knight, Dunkirk. And then for me, there's a bit of a gap before Tenet.
Okay.
But I do still enjoy Tenet a great deal, of course. And this is just more of a reflection of how much I love movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because 5 and 6 are Batman Begins and The Prestige. I like those movies a whole fucking lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Batman Begins actually ended up shaking out to having a higher rating. I shouldn't spoil that for everybody, as that's not coming out for another week and a half or so, maybe 2 weeks. But if I recall correctly, it didn't do a ton worse than Tenet here. Like just barely, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and that's, let's see, I'm looking at it. Average 881. Little spoiler there for some people, but on average. So,
the point isn't the rating. The point is the discussion leading up to it. That is what the podcast is about.
But I mean, Nolan knows how to make his movies. That's for sure. And I love this comparison people are making with Nolan and Greta Gerwig, just for all the Barbenheimer, Oppen, Barbie, however you want to say it. The war's going on, but people are like really rooting for Greta Gerwig, like to come up, like, and just be like this huge name and like keep doing it. And she's saying like she's going on a very similar path to Nolan, like making 2 films that were, I don't know what you call
one
them,
for
not
them,
franchise
one for me,
film.
sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that's what it was. And then like a franchise film, like Nolan did Batman, and then now Greta's doing Barbie. So people are saying that we should expect a Barbie trilogy. And the second one's going to be even better than the first.
There's already a sequel in the works.
Yeah, so like I think like it's crazy the path that they are going down, which I don't know, could be really awesome. So I like that we're doing the spotlight on Greta here soon, and we can, I don't know,
the Greta Gerwig.
The Gerwig, yeah, I got to get used to that. But man, no, this is a good time to be a movie fan right now, or at least. So there's some movies that are coming out just for money and cash grabs and whatever. But
hey, man,
even
though you can find a lot of enjoyment in it. I just watched the Super Mario Brothers movie the other night, and it's low on my 2023 movie ranking, but I had a good time, man. And that's what
Jack
that's for.
Black, Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Who else is up in there? Like
Keegan-Michael Key.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't he Toad or something like that?
Yeah, he's Toad. And that's what's crazy about that movie is that like everyone's doing hardcore voice work except for Chris Pratt as Mario. I feel like he's really just serving himself with a slightly little bit of a different voice. Anya Taylor-Joy was Princess Peach. Charlie Day was Luigi. It was I had a fun time. It wasn't like it wouldn't do nearly as good as Tenet did here, but it would it would do fine.
If so, well, maybe I do hope so, because that'd be, I don't know what world we live in where a Mario movie is made this well, but I mean, there's a Batman movie that was made this well, or I think even better in The Dark Knight. So like,
there you go.
Can exist, I guess. But no, I think Nolan shook out pretty well. We got one more to go, obviously, but we'll watch that.
Yeah, I can't believe the anticipatory work is already done, because we did 10 fucking movies before Asteroid City.
That was easy. That was a piece of cake.
And that's what's crazy is like the closest we'll get is Scorsese with Killers of the Flower Moon, and even that won't be as many as we did with Wes Anderson. Granted, with Nolan and Scorsese, we have covered some of their movies. When it came to the 52-year journey through film, we covered, I think, 3 Scorsese, maybe even 4, with Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, The Departed, and Wolf of Wall Street. So yeah, 4.
And I guess with Nolan, we already covered Interstellar, and the trilogy
Inception.
we're covering. Oh yeah, and it's 5 movies like that we either covered.
And we're going to be covering Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. Like we will end up covering 8 Nolan movies when all's said and done, but in anticipation of Oppenheimer. Given what we have scheduled and what we've already done, we only had 3 movies to choose. Well, we had 4, but we had a scheduling conflict with Asteroid City being released a week later than we thought.
Yeah, maybe
it was going to be Memento, but
maybe I watched now. Just see, because there's not one before Memento.
No, yeah, we could do the same thing we did with Asteroid City, where we just watch the first one before the most recent one. That'd be a fun little tradition.
Yeah. But man,
man, I had a great fucking time.
Oppenheimer, though. Oh, am I ready for that
Dude,
movie?
I'm far more excited than I was 3 weeks ago. And I was already excited. I was ready to see this movie. It looks like it's going to be one of his best. Cillian Murphy is fucking incredible. I love that guy.
Dropping random pictures of him looking hella stressed out and sad, and that's all
the whole promotional material. That's all it needs.
1 picture a week almost is what it seems, and that's all I need. Cillian? Is that how you...
Cillian, yeah.
Cillian. Okay, so like Cillian. I just didn't know if I was saying. I didn't know if it was like Cillian or like I didn't know the C or if it's.
No, there were a lot of people who just realized it was Cillian based off of a interview behind the scenes where one of his co-stars calls him Cillian, and people were like, "Oh, I've been saying his name wrong." Like,
Cillian. Okay.
A lot of people think it's Cillian, but it is Cillian.
Yeah, because I just know him from Peaky Blinders.
Peaky fucking Blinders.
Yeah. I think I haven't watched the newest season out yet, but
I haven't watched. I've watched the first 3 episodes, each of which I always really, really like. I've watched the first 3 episodes like 6 fucking times, trying to commit to it.
It's tough. It is a tough show to commit to, but
I just have a tough time committing to TV at large, and so
incredible though in it, and that's what I'm excited to see what he can do as like a lead role here, because. Man,
on a feature film.
Yeah, because we talked about him as Scarecrow and how he got a little overshadowed and stuff like that.
It's time, man. He finally gets to headline a Christopher Nolan movie, which I'm very excited about. But that means we will be back next week to talk Oppenheimer next Wednesday. It comes out this Friday.
Survive the theater trip.
Yes,
hopefully. Who knows what'll happen there?
Yeah, we're going to be seeing it on IMAX and 70mm. Which I'm extremely excited for. That picture's going to be crisp. I'm very excited for that. But I think with that, we can go ahead and conclude this bad boy. If you would, head to patreon.com/PennyBloomPod, where you'll find over 50 hours of exclusive content. All sorts of stuff over there for you. We have a $1.50 tier where you get nothing but written reviews, and if you were on it this month, that would mean you've already gotten a Past Lives and Dial of Destiny review, at the very least, because we're recording a little bit in advance, and a fictional short story on the $3 tier that I wrote and I'm very proud of, called Him and Her, and that's what you would have over there on Patreon as of July 6th, so a couple things in a week. Keep that in mind. That's kind of the pace I like to keep. You get a lot of stuff if you sign up at the Patreon, and you get the satisfaction of supporting us financially, which is huge because this costs me money and I don't make any off of it unless it's over there. So thank you to my patrons over there, our patrons over there, and we appreciate you greatly. Let's see. Head to Twitter, follow at PennyBloomPod. Follow on Instagram at PennyBloomPodcast. Recently signed up for the Instagram extension app, Threads.
Oh yeah,
Threads and Instagram app. We're over there now at Penny Bloom Podcast. Seems like it could be a very interesting platform that I'm very, very excited about. But I'm gonna stick to Twitter until that shit really collapses for real. I will update Threads every once in a while.
And we'll see how the social media war goes.
Yeah. Between the Zuck and the Musk.
Yeah, if that fight actually happens in the Roman Coliseum, I'm gonna fucking die. Like, that's gonna be so funny that we'll actually be alive to experience that. Like, what the fuck?
No, that'd be fucking hilarious. But yeah, head all those places and follow us there. Remember to leave a 5-star rate and review and download some episodes for us. Yeah, Oppenheimer's next week, but Barbie's releasing the same day. So we're doing Greta Gerwig after we do Nolan, and unlike these previous projects that have taken us weeks, we are going to go ahead and just release those back to back to back, a little week of Greta Gerwig, the Greta Gerwig, as we have dubbed it. And I'm very excited for that. Our comic book movie journey through film is still continuing. I believe this Friday is Constantine.
Yes.
Or is it V?
Yeah, no. This Friday is Constantine.
This Friday is Constantine.
I just really like V
for Vendetta.
I jumped the gun on that movie a lot.
We've still got our Game of Thrones rewatch podcast going. Winter is Blooming is on Mondays. And if you're a fan of the Penny Bloom podcast and you're a fan of television, or if you haven't even watched Game of Thrones, watch that shit and then catch up with us. Cause, I don't know how much more television we're ever going to cover after we get through with Game of Thrones. Like the movie stuff is just too fulfilling. I have too much fun with it. I feel like I'm too locked in with TV shows sometimes. Like, bruh, I haven't watched Secret Invasion since the premiere, dog.
Really? Oh, I'm up to date on it. I just kind of I always forget though that it's out, and I'm like, oh yeah, that is out. I guess I'll watch it.
I haven't watched it since week 1, and I've had no compulsion to. I'm sure the show's fine.
It's
but
okay.
Yeah, I'm like, but that's where I'm at with a lot of TV in general. I'm like, it's fine. You know, there are the goodies. There are the goodies that slip through the cracks, and that's why we're covering Game of Thrones. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll get back into it. But the week by week shit for TV, it gets tough. But yeah, check that out. And with that, I was Colton Robertson. I was joined by Joseph George. Thank you very much, homie.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it is always a pleasure to have you. And remember, peace, love, and bloom. And we are the ones who save the world from what might happen.